Emma Khan pressed her boarding pass against the scanner, barely hearing the polite ding that welcomed her onto Flight 742 to London. Her body moved automatically, like a machine running on its last battery. 3 days of back-to-back deadlines, endless coffee, and the blue glow of her laptop screen had carved shadows under her eyes. She couldn't remember the last proper meal she'd eaten, maybe a soggy sandwich at midnight, and her brain felt wrapped in fog. Row 7. Seat C aisle. Perfect. She murmured a half-hearted "excuse me" as she stowed her small carry-on above and collapsed into the narrow seat. The recycled cabin air smelled faintly of disinfectant and vanilla hand lotion, the kind that flight attendants seemed to wear as part of the uniform. Around her, passengers shuffled, buckled, and sighed, performing the ritual of air travel. Emma rested her head against the window for a moment, watching rain streaks twist down the glass. The tarmac lights blurred into glowing ribbons of orange. Outside, baggage carts rumbled, their beeping distant and hollow. The world out there felt strangely detached, as if she were already floating somewhere between sleep and waking. The intercom crackled to life. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard British Air Flight 742 with service to London Heathrow." His calm, practiced voice melted into the background. Emma tuned out after the first sentence. All she wanted was quiet. Just an hour or two of nothingness before she landed, faced her presentation, and pretended to be sharp again. She tugged the thin airline blanket over her legs, feeling its scratchy fabric against her skin. Her fingers brushed the edge of her travel notebook, still open to a page filled with equations and half-finished sketches of turbine blades. She smiled faintly. "No more engines tonight," she whispered to herself. Ironically, the soft drone of real engines became her lullaby. The cabin lights dimmed to a soothing amber. Somewhere nearby, a baby gave a brief protesting cry before settling again. A man in 7A tilted his seat back, already snoring gently. Emma's eyelids fluttered. For the first time in days, her thoughts began to slow. She drifted through fragments of dreams. Her office whiteboard, the sound of rain on a lab roof, the whir of testing machines. In her half-sleep, everything blurred. Equations became stars. Circuits became constellations. Her body loosened, surrendering to the rhythm of the aircraft as it cut through the clouds. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed. Time meant nothing up here. She was floating, peaceful, somewhere above the world. Then a sudden change. A voice over the intercom, sharper than before. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." Emma stirred, her eyes half open. The tone was different now, strained, urgent. The quiet hum of the cabin seemed to hold its breath. "If anyone on board knows how to fly an aircraft, please come to the cockpit immediately." Emma sat upright, her heart slamming once in her chest. The sleep vanished instantly. The plane was still steady, but everything inside her had shifted. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. If anyone on board knows how to fly an aircraft, please come to the cockpit immediately." For a moment, Emma thought she was still dreaming. The words hung in the air, heavy and unreal. Then came the gasp. A sharp intake of breath that rippled through the cabin like a spark. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Somewhere near the front, a baby started to cry. Emma blinked hard, trying to make sense of what she'd heard. "Fly an aircraft?" That couldn't be real. Maybe she'd misheard through the static of the intercom. But when she looked around, the expressions of the other passengers told her otherwise. Wide eyes, open mouths, nervous whispers. A flight attendant rushed past her row, moving so quickly she nearly dropped the tray of bottled water she'd been carrying. Emma caught a glimpse of her face, pale, lips pressed tight, eyes glossy with fear. It wasn't part of any in-flight routine Emma had ever seen. "Ma'am?" Someone called shakily from across the aisle. "What's going on?" "What did he say?" The attendant didn't answer. She disappeared behind the curtain that separated economy from the front cabin, and a murmur rose like static from the rows of seats. Emma's pulse quickened. The engines still hummed steadily beneath the floor, but the air around her had changed. It was no longer the calm cocoon of a night flight. It was charged, tense, alive with questions no one dared to ask out loud. Then the cockpit door opened. Emma craned her neck and saw two attendants helping a man out, the co-pilot. His uniform was drenched with sweat. His face was the color of chalk, and one of his hands clutched at his chest, while the other trembled in the air as if trying to steady himself. His headset dangled from his neck. "Oh my God," someone whispered. Emma's stomach dropped. The co-pilot's knees buckled, and the attendants caught him before he could hit the floor. The murmurs grew louder, rising into fragments of panic. A woman in the next row started praying under her breath. A man fumbled for his phone, then froze, realizing there was no signal up here. Emma's mind raced. She tried to remember everything she knew about commercial planes, every documentary she'd ever half-watched while working late nights. Pilots had backups. Systems had redundancies. There was no way a modern aircraft could be left helpless in midair. And yet, the intercom crackled again. The captain's voice sounded weaker now, strained, like someone speaking through pain. "This is not a drill. Please remain calm," I repeat. "If anyone on board has flight experience, please come to the cockpit immediately." Her heart pounded against her ribs. Flight experience. The words echoed in her mind, pulling her back to a time when she'd sat inside a simulator at her university lab, guiding a virtual jet through turbulence. It wasn't real. It had never been real. But the controls, the sounds, the pressure of it all came flooding back in vivid detail. She swallowed hard. Around her, people looked at each other helplessly, hoping someone, anyone, would stand up. And that's when Emma realized, with a cold twist of dread, that maybe she was the only one who could. For a moment, Emma couldn't move. Her body was frozen, locked between reason and instinct. The cabin seemed to pulse around her, the low murmur of frightened passengers, the faint beeping of the seatbelt signs, the rhythmic hum of the engines that suddenly sounded more fragile than before. This can't be happening, she thought. I'm not a pilot, I'm an engineer. I design the systems, not fly them. But then the image of the co-pilot's pale, trembling face flashed in her mind. The captain's strained voice still echoed in her ears. And beneath it all, the plane kept moving, steady for now, but for how long? Her hands were shaking when she finally unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up, almost expecting someone else to do it first. Some ex-military officer, a retired airline pilot, anyone. But the rows stayed still. Dozens of eyes followed her, a mix of hope and disbelief. I might be able to help, she heard herself say. Her voice cracked halfway through the sentence, but it was enough. The nearest flight attendant turned instantly, relief and fear colliding in her face. You can fly? Not exactly, Emma admitted, swallowing hard. But I've trained on simulators. I know the basics. There was no time to question. Follow me, the attendant said, her tone shifting from panic to desperate professionalism. Emma was guided quickly up the aisle. Passengers watched in stunned silence, some clutching their armrests, others whispering prayers. The plane tilted slightly as if to remind them all of the stakes. When Emma stepped through the cockpit door, the world outside the cabin vanished. The air inside was thick, metallic, hot, filled with the sharp scent of burnt electronics and sweat. Red warning lights flickered across the instrument panels. The captain sat slumped in his chair, one hand gripping the yoke, the other pressed against his left shoulder, dark with blood. He looked up as she entered, eyes glassy but alert. You said you can fly? I can try, Emma replied, forcing her voice steady. Tell me what's wrong. Engine 2's failing, he rasped, his breathing shallow. Hydraulics are unstable. Autopilot's down, he coughed, wincing in pain. I just need someone to hold her steady while I get you patched in with control. Emma slid into the co-pilot's seat. The control column felt heavier than she'd imagined, solid, alive, trembling faintly beneath her hands. Her fingers hovered over the switches, instinctively finding their positions like memories buried deep. The captain gave quick, clipped instructions between gasps. Pitch, 2 degrees down. Keep her level. Don't overcorrect. Her engineering mind kicked in, her fear shrinking behind calculation and control. Numbers, systems, reactions. She understood those. She could handle those. The plane dipped slightly. Emma tightened her grip and adjusted. The horizon steadied. Alarms continued to chirp, angry red lights demanding attention. But the trembling in the yoke began to even out. You've got this, the captain murmured, his voice fading. Just Keep her steady. Emma nodded, jaw tight, heart hammering. Outside the windshield, the endless stretch of clouds glowed faintly under the moonlight. She wasn't a pilot, but in this moment, she was the only thing standing between 200 lives and the sky. The cockpit was a storm of lights and noise. Red and amber warnings flashed across the panels, overlapping like a heartbeat gone wild. Emma's palms were slick against the controls, her pulse hammering in her ears. Outside, the world was nothing but clouds, a swirling gray wall hiding everything that mattered below. A voice crackled through the headset. Flight 742, this is Heathrow approach. We copy your situation. You're cleared for emergency landing. Maintain heading 270 and begin gradual descent to 5,000 feet. Emma exhaled shakily. They're with me, she thought. She wasn't alone, not completely. 270 descending to 5,000, she repeated, forcing calm into her tone. The captain nodded faintly from his seat, his left arm pressed tightly against his shoulder. His face was ashen, but his eyes stayed sharp, locked on the instruments. Good, he murmured. You're doing fine. The aircraft shuddered as another warning blared. Engine 2 flickered on the display, pressure low, temperature high. Emma adjusted the throttle carefully, recalling the hours she'd spent in simulators years ago. Those were games back then, abstract scenarios on a screen. This was real. Every movement carried 200 lives. Stabilize at 2,000 feet, the controller's voice continued. You'll break through the clouds soon. Runway, aeronaut is clear. Winds from the west, 9 knots. Emma nodded, even though they couldn't see her. Copy that. Her throat was dry. Every word scraped. The plane broke through the lower layer of clouds and suddenly, there it was. The runway, a strip of glowing lights piercing the darkness, impossibly small, impossibly far, yet shining like salvation itself. A wave of emotion hit her, fear, relief, disbelief. But she couldn't afford to feel any of it. Not yet. Flaps 20, she said. Her fingers moved automatically, guided by buried muscle memory. The plane responded with a heavy groan, slowing just enough. Landing gear down. The gear deployed with a deep metallic thud. The sound was the sweetest thing she'd ever heard. Speed 150 knots, the captain whispered, his voice hoarse. Keep her steady. Don't fight the crosswind. Let her glide in. The lights of London flickered in the distance. The cabin behind them was silent now, every soul braced, holding their breath. Emma's hands tightened on the yoke as the runway grew larger, rushing toward them like a promise. Easy. Easy, the captain murmured. The ground raced up to meet them. Emma pulled back slightly. Too much. The plane jolted. Alarms wailed. She corrected, heart pounding. Then the wheels hit. A rough bounce, another, and then contact. The wheels gripped. The nose settled. The roar of the engines reversed. The aircraft slowed, shuddering violently, but it stayed on the line. Stayed whole. The cabin erupted. Cheers, sobs, applause. A wave of raw human sound that filled the air. Emma slumped back in the seat, trembling, tears mixing with sweat on her face. The captain turned to her, his breathing ragged but steady now. Medics rushed in through the cockpit door, voices overlapping. As they lifted him onto a stretcher, he managed a weak, crooked smile. "Remind me," he said, eyes glinting, "never to underestimate a passenger in 7C. Emma laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound, and watched as dawn began to bleed across the horizon outside the window. The storm was over. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe.